We will ask for a motion after we have established a quorum. Does that work for you?
Thank you. Absolutely.
Great. This is AB 231, revises procedures under CEQA for findings of overriding consideration. It's my understanding that in consultation with committee staff that you've agreed to take amendments that are described in comment number 3 of our published analysis.
I have.
Well, thank you for that. Please present.
Thank you. Well, I'll be brief because I know there's a lot going on today and that people want to get to it. But you know, and probably have a depth of knowledge beyond mine, that over the years the legislature has enacted a number of changes to CEQA to simplify and streamline the process without undermining any of its environmental protections. And this bill is just another one of those ways to do some streamlining that hopefully will cut some of the cost but not change any of the environmental protections under the existing CEQA law. And that's the hope, because we have taken the committee amendments, or will be taking the committee amendments suggested in comment 3. I think we're pretty good on protecting all of the environmental intent and doing just this streamlining measure to try to make the process a little simpler.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? Are there questions from members of the committee? Senator Corbett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My one question would be, does the opposition remain the same with the amendments, or is there any change?
I don't want to represent their position, but I believe they were going to be here to let the committee know.
All right.
Actually, here we go.
Then let's do this. As people are taking their seats, why don't we ask the staff to call the roll so we can establish a quorum?
Simitian.
Here.
Runner. Corbett.
Here.
Hancock.
Here.
Lowenthal.
Here.
Pavley. Strickland.
Quorum has been established. We have heard from the author. The author has agreed to take as author's amendments those amendments which were recommended in comment number 3 of the published agenda and analysis. We have asked if there are witnesses in support. When we asked, there were none. We're now asking if there are witnesses in opposition. Witnesses in opposition, yes.
Thank you. Tina Angelino with the Planning and Conservation League. My apologies for rushing in, and thank you for the recap. We were opposed unless amended, and I'm very pleased to see that the amendments are being taken, and so we are happy to withdraw our opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other witnesses either in opposition or in, we'll call them witnesses in transition?
Michael Endicott with Sierra Club, California. We thank you for the amendments. When we see them, I'll take them to my committee and see if we can change our position. We think they go a long way to helping. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from members of the, or comments or questions from members of the committee? Why don't we take a minute, if we could, Assemblymember, just to let people glance at their notes, look at the analysis one more time. Amber, could we ask you to give the Assemblymember a glass of water, please? It comes at no charge here in the Senate.
Thank you very much.
Then, Assemblymember, if you'd like to offer a brief close, and then I'm going to ask for a motion do pass as amended.
Thank you, and I just would be brief and say this does nothing to undercut the environmental protections of CEQA, only makes the process a little more streamlined, and so with that I urge your support. Thank you.
All right. Members?
And thank you for the water.
Thank you. Do we have a motion do pass as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion by Corbett. Call the roll.
Simitian.
Aye.
Simitian, aye. Runner. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Lowenthal. Pavley. Strickland.
All right. 3-0. Your bill is on call. We've got a couple of members who I think may want to take a minute or two to catch up with the fast-moving pace of this committee and your presentation, but we will lift the call somewhat later in order to let absent members add on.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember. I think we're looking for Assemblymember Miller to present the committee bill. Sergeants, we have called Assemblymember Miller and believe he's on the way. Great. Thank you very much. For those of you who are considering the amendments to the Huber bill, which was just taken up, if you look at comment 3 in the analysis, that will provide some guidance.
I may need that. Thank you.
Members, we are waiting for Assemblymember Miller, who I'm sure is dealing with other obligations today. First day back, always a little bit hectic. If we can ask Sergeant at Arms one more time to see if Assemblymember Miller can join us. His is the only remaining item on our agenda today. Does Assemblymember Miller have staff here in the room? Is there committee staff who would like to present on the bill? All right, members, if we could ask the members to take their seat, what I'm going to do is suggest that we lift the call on the previous item, and then we're going to go to the item that comes to us from the committee that Assemblymember Miller was going to present. And if he's arrived, that will be just great. And if not, then we'll honor the request of the committee chair, Mr. Nava, to allow staff to present. So, members, let's lift the call on AB 231, Huber. Please call the absent members.
Runner. Lowenthal. Aye. Lowenthal, aye. Havley. Strickland. I have 4 yes.
We have 4 aye votes. That is sufficient, but I'm going to hold the roll open so that absent members may add on if they wish. That then takes us to the one remaining item, which is a committee item, and we're going to ask Assemblymember Miller, who's just walked in, to present. Assemblymember Miller, welcome.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, not at all. We understand people are a little hectic on that first day back.
Appreciate it.
And members, if we can ask you to give your attention to Assemblymember Miller. Senator Corbett, Senator Lowenthal, Senator Hancock. Thank you. Please present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members. AB 25 is an Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee bill. Persons who generate, transport, or offer for transport, treat, store, or dispose of hazardous waste must have a California identification number issued by the Department of Toxic Substance Control, known as DTSC, which is used to identify the hazardous waste handler and to track the waste from its point of origin to its final disposal. It is estimated by DTSC that there are over 118,000 permanent and temporary ID numbers in the state. DTSC mails a verification questionnaire every year to owners of permanent California ID numbers in order to verify the ID number information which they have on file. Failure to return the completed questionnaire back to DTSC in a timely fashion will result in the suspension of the ID number, which is the problem that this proposed measure is seeking to resolve. Believe it or not, over 20%, that's over 23,000 generators each year, are failing to renew their ID number by not submitting the renewal form in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, DTSC's existing system suspends an ID number for failure to complete the annual review form, creates a serious problem, particularly in an emergency pickup situation. Reactivation or obtaining of a new ID number often takes weeks, and even in emergencies, particularly at night when accidents may occur, cannot be obtained for at least several hours at best. Without an active ID number in place, haulers cannot legally pick up the hazardous waste, which creates the dilemma. What does a generator do with the backed up hazardous waste? And that is why we are presenting AB 25 to solve this important problem in picking up hazardous waste. Today, I have with me Phil Vermeulen, that is representing the sponsor.
Before we go to the witnesses, Assembly Member, I think it'll be helpful to the committee to know that there was some concern on the part of the chair that we might like to see a somewhat narrower approach than had originally been proposed. Working with the chair, the staff was kind enough to draft amendments for consideration by the committee, the Assembly Committee, for their consideration. Those amendments allow for a transporter to pick up just one load of used oil from a generator with the suspended ID, assuming that that's for essentially non-payment or an oversight rather than some bad behavior. Right. And then that happens only if the generator and the transporter notify DTSC, and the amendments require the generator to take care of their outstanding bill with DTSC within 30 days. So the notion here was essentially if there's an oversight, then one opportunity to conduct business as usual, but only with special notice and with the obligation then to get current within 30 days so that we're essentially getting people back on track if for some reason there's been a problem. With that set of amendments, I believe that the author and the committee have agreed to take those as author's amendments, yes?
Absolutely.
All right, then, with that understanding and with those amendments, the chair is prepared to recommend a do pass vote, but let's go ahead and hear from the witnesses in support and then witnesses in opposition, if any.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Phil Vermeulen, representing the independent waste oil collectors and transporters. First off, the Assemblyman was speaking about hazardous waste. I want to be sure we understand we're talking used oil. We're not talking all types of hazardous waste here. Strictly used oil. Very important. This is a big problem. Representing the transporters, as the Assemblyman said, over 23,000 a year approximately are invalid or suspended, and legally my guy can't pick up the oil. So this is a loophole that we want to try to resolve and do the right thing for the environment and for trying to make the system work better. With that, I have one of my members here, Mr. Ted Freemow, if you have any technical questions. Otherwise, I want to thank you for your time. I also would like to point out that Carol Mortensen worked over the weekend on this and did a yeoman's job on helping us make this thing right, and I want to thank her publicly.
Well, we certainly appreciate that and look forward to giving you the opportunity to work over the weekend again sometime in the near future. All right. Are there comments or questions from members of the committee before we ask if there are witnesses in opposition? Senator Corbett.
Yes, I do have one question on the new amendments as described by the chair. So I'm not sure if this is part of this bill or current law. If the operator doesn't come in compliance within the 30 days, what is the penalty?
Staff?
That section of the Health and Safety Code is under Chapter 6.5, which carries, I think, a maximum daily penalty of up to $10,000 to be enforced by DTSC.
So clearly there's incentive to make good on these. Thank you very much.
Senator Lowenthal, did you have a comment or question as well?
One is just a procedural question. This is a committee bill, Assembly Environmental Safety and Toxic, yet it was gutted in the Senate, right? And it's an entirely different bill in the Senate, is that not? Or is this bill similar to what went through the Assembly?
Let's go to the...
We had a minor hang-up coming through the Assembly, and in working with DTSC and the chair of Toxics, we were able to come to agreement on how the bill should move forward to address the problem.
But this bill, the Huffman bill that came out of this bill, no, not this bill, this bill before that came out of the Assembly as the committee bill was different than this. Is that not so?
Correct. I think.
Okay.
How do we vote on an Assembly committee bill when that committee has never seen this bill?
Well, let me ask a question. The Assembly amended the bill on January 13th of 2010. That's the Assembly version that we're looking at. Did the bill deal with this question of used oil at that time?
No, it was the desire of this committee to gut and amend and add this in.
No,
it was germane. It was dealing with this issue. We were working, engaging everyone in terms of trying to come up with a way to solve the problem. But yes, it was dealing with this, AB 2388.
Oh, okay.
All right. When we ask staff to comment again, let us know what the history is here.
The concept of the bill that's in the current bill, AB 25, started out as, I believe, Assemblymember Miller's measure, AB 2388, that was heard in the Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee in the form that is in print today. So the content of the bill was heard by that committee.
Oh, it was?
And Mr. Miller's bill, AB 20.
Oh, Mr. Miller's bill.
Yes, AB 2388.
It's held in appropriations.
Held appropriations. I confirmed with appropriation and leadership staff that it was all right to move this concept forward, that why it got held was not related to the context of what was in the bill. So the committee decided to make the use a vehicle as the committee to move the concept forward.
And members, I should let you know, as I referenced in passing earlier, we do have a letter from the chair of the Assembly Committee on Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials, Assemblymember Pedro Nava, who asks, quote, I respectfully request permission for Assemblymember Jeff Miller to present my bill, AB 25, on my behalf in your committee today because of scheduling conflicts. So clearly the chair of the committee has indicated that he's comfortable with the content of the bill that's before us.
It just seems a little strange, this process where an individual had a bill that was held in appropriations, the committee had a bill, the committee bill was then modified in the other house. It's still a committee bill rather than the author's bill. The committee never voted on this bill as a bill. It just seems like a strange process that we're doing. But if the committee chair and if the chair is satisfied with it, that's fine with me.
I think I would have concerns if the staff had not checked with folks on the other side of the building to make sure that they were comfortable with the flexibility being afforded to both the committee and the author.
Well, you're lucky. Yeah. Well, as long as everybody's brought up, I think I compliment the chair of the committee here for that flexibility. I'm just wondering, are there formally letters in support of this bill? I just had not seen any letter, any support in the bill itself.
Yes.
Are there Let me ask you: Are there witnesses in opposition? If we're going to,
I don't believe we have any opposition to the bill.
let me ask that one more time. Are there witnesses in opposition? All right. If not, back to the committee. Senator Hancock.
Yeah, my question was looking at the amended bill, which this started out as a hazardous waste hauler bill, but now it's just for generators of used oil, not for other hazardous waste, yeah? And where does it show that this is only if they had a minor reason, like not re-registering their permit? What are the other reasons a permit might be suspended? And what if you had an actual bad actor that wanted to go in the dead of night and take away used oil?
Let me go ahead and ask Ms. Mortensen and staff on this measure to comment again and give you a reference point.
I have cross-referenced in the proposed amendments Health and Safety Code section 25205.16, which is the code section that deals with the annual verification and fees and kind of re-uppance of the ID numbers. So that section just deals with that. That would be the only case when you would get a reactivation, if it was just a violation of that.
Just a violation of that one piece.
Yeah, and that section just contains the annual reactivation.
And then this is kind of following up on Senator Corbett's question about what are the consequences. Well, the consequences could be a fine that would be fairly substantial. Has DTSC indicated it has the staff to check up on these things? What if the generator is the person that notifies the department, and the transporter also? Yes, both of them must notify the department?
That's correct.
And what happens if they don't? I mean, does DTSC actually have an enforcement division that is equipped to go out and look at these things?
If it's not Furlough Friday.
Yeah.
Staff?
Yes, if it's not Furlough Friday. They do have a pretty active enforcement division. They also have the Certified Unified Program Agency folks that are the local government arm of DTSC's enforcement unit that usually does the on-and-ground enforcement with these guys as well. They kind of keep track on, especially on the generator side, since they're the stationary folks. So they have an obligation to help enforcement with making sure people have all their proper identification numbers and permits, both state and local.
And finally, can you tell me what the history is of an actual problem that occurred when there was an emergency situation with used oil and the hauler couldn't come and get it because the generator hadn't renewed their permit? Is this a major problem? Like, give me
in the event of a
in the event
of a car accident, an accident on the freeway where oil needed to be cleaned up and picked up, they would, or in the event of a car dealership that needed had a capacity of, say, 200 gallons of used oil, it was at capacity. It had not actually filed the paperwork to renew the ID number. The hauler would go out and be unable to pick that hazardous waste up, and therefore the dealer would be unable to collect any more used oil at the dealership, and may be inclined to use somebody that is not licensed or would ultimately dispose of it improperly. But I would defer to the sponsor and share some life stories.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the problem right now is that these people, as I said, out of 118,000 on average, about 23,000 a year are not reactivating their license. So there's a major flaw in the existing system. These people, for example, a car dealer, let's use that are full, they've got to do something. Somebody's picking up that oil. My guy who's playing by all the rules is not the one picking it up. Somebody's picking that oil up. Where is it going? It's falling between the cracks. It's going out to the environment. Who knows where it's going? That's the problem. We want this system to work properly. That's the whole idea behind this bill, is that there's a major flaw in the existing system. Help us to make sure the system works properly. That's all we're trying to do with this, and make sure that it falls into legitimate ways that it should be dealt with.
And they would have 30 days after the pickup to get the paperwork submitted to DTSC.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Assemblymember, excuse me, Senator.
I used to be. Just one last question, just so that I understand this. When this oil, this used oil, is being dealt with appropriately and legally, there is tracking at both ends, right?
Right.
So there's not necessarily an unknown as to, where this is moving, and that's how you can track whether the appropriate person has picked it up. Because
the manifest system.
Right. So the person, right, that's right. So the person that is the generator is also logging it somewhere. So there's knowledge that this is moving in the system, and you can track. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Senator, let me make one suggestion, and I'm going to go to Senator Lowenthal. I think what I'd like to do here, I believe Mr. Runner is absent today. Not clear if Mr. Strickland's going to be able to join us. It's not clear if Senator Strickland's going to be able to join us. Would like to take action on the bill. I think that what might assuage some of the concern, it's just my assessment, is if we could get a commitment from the Vice Chair and from the committee staff, both of whom are here today representing the Chair, that the committee will, not may, but will rehear the bill if it passes out of this committee, goes off the Senate floor, so that all parties here are comfortable with the fact that this is truly a committee bill and a committee product when it gets to the Assembly in its revised form. So with that assurance, that'd be great. Assemblymember Miller.
Thank you.
And then let me look to the committee staff.
Well, certainly the committee will hear this when it returns on concurrence, just as we would hear other bills that have been amended substantially in the second House.
All right, thank you. Then with that commitment, I think what I'd like to do is ask for a do pass as amended motion with a contingent, and we're going to be a little flexible here on process because we're all trying to do that contingent on confirmation from the chair that the chair will call and schedule a hearing to hear the bill when it comes out of this House and back to the Assembly, assuming that happens. All right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from, before we get to that motion, since we're now following our rules of procedure a little more rigorously here, I don't want to cut off debate or questions. So, Senator Lowenthal, with the understanding that that's the motion forthcoming.
I have a question, just to understand again. So there are 116,000 or so, I think you said, I'm not sure, 23,000 almost, which is over 20%. How long the first question is, how long are they usually out? I mean, you can't be dropping a quarter of the generators each year. You'd be, in 4 years, you'd be eliminating everybody. Are they usually out of compliance for a month, 2 months, 3 months? How long does this system work? With 23,000 every year, talking about almost a quarter of everyone is really not, maybe 20%. Does that, when do they catch up in this system? These are minor things. They didn't pay their fees or they didn't know it. They're notified, but they're still out of compliance, right? So DTSC is notifying them, but they're still out of compliance, right? And so then when they go to the generator to pick it up, I mean, when a hauler goes to the generator, they cannot pick it up because they do not have. And with this, so the first question is, when do they usually come back? Because they're not dropping that many people off every year. What's the data on it? And then the second question is, so I now go, this person, this generator, Jiffy Lube, is out of, it doesn't have their permit. Now it's not been renewed. I go, they're going to have a month, 30 days, I believe, to get in. But what happens when the next hauler comes the following day? Do they still have, could they have 20 or 30 haulers coming? They have 30 days to pay. How do we deal with the fact that they don't feel like they don't want to pay everybody now says, I have a gift of 30 days. I can still do this. As many people show up as possible. I can keep the money until they come after me. How do we know that they're really going to get, since we're allowing this, who's going to do all this tracking?
It is. For each generator. That's a one-time.
That's a one-time.
Ted, do you want to respond to it?
Yes, I'd like to.
Go ahead. Grab this.
Hi, my name is Ted Freemal. The way that it works right now is the DTSC sends these forms out, and in some cases they go to people that don't know what they mean, don't know what they are. It just says it's a verification questionnaire, and so their number is deactivated because 30 days later the DTSC doesn't get that verification
and
questionnaire.
they usually get activated again at some point, right? Or else
Only upon doing what the DTSC had requested them to do in the first place, so they don't get automatically reactivated unless they go through the steps to give DTSC what they want. That is the verification form back. In most cases, there's not even a fee imposed with it. In more than 50%, I would say, there's no fee even imposed. People just don't. It doesn't look like a really. It's not a piece of paper where you look at and go, wow, I need to get this back or I'm going to be in trouble. And I know the DTSC's worked on that to make it look more formal. So their number's inactive. I've got, when I get a call to pick somebody up, I go onto the DTSC's website, I look up their EPID number, I can see that it's been inactive for the last 3 months.
Right, but now with this bill, you can go and pick up, a hauler can go if it's inactive, and that generator has 30 days then to become active, right? To activate it.
Yes.
Let's say the next day another hauler comes. Can they do the same thing?
Well, they'd only have oil. All the oil was picked up by Ted, so the guy wouldn't have enough oil the next day to pick up.
How about a week later?
A month later.
A couple of days later? Who knows? Who's monitoring all this?
29 days.
Well, really, this is just to keep somebody like, say, a car dealership that they have a 500-gallon tank and they generate 100 gallons of used oil a day.
Could I interrupt for a minute? I want to work through staff and see if I can answer the question.
Yes.
It's my understanding that the amendments specifically provide that you get one pickup.
But who knows?
And then the amendments also provide that both the generator and the transporter have to notify DTSC.
Right, okay, so let's say they do that.
So if that happens on the first pickup, then the next day, even in the unlikely event that there was a pickup the next day, the generator would be obliged as a matter of law to inform DTSC that there had been a pickup, which would mean that he was in violation of the one pickup rule because he'd be notifying us about the second pickup. Even if we think that the generator is unlikely to send a notice indicating that he's engaged in unlawful behavior, the transporter is also required under the amendments to send a notice.
Maybe a different transporter.
That's right, but that means that DTSC will then be notified that there were two pickups, one from one transporter, one from the second transporter, within 2 days, and then DTSC will effectively have record of the fact that there's been a violation. So that's why both the generator and the transporter are required to send the notice in the amendments.
And DTSC says, I haven't seen anybody here, they can accommodate all this? They have the staff to do this?
Staff?
I have not had discussions with the DTSC on this issue. They are, as witnesses vindicated, they are working on this deactivation issue because it is a problem and it's getting worse instead of better. And I know they do have an active, both at the state and local level, enforcement on this issue. So I can't guarantee it.
I think the part that just troubles me is not about what they're doing, is the fact that they're sending out these forms. Sometimes you're saying there's no permitting, no money that even has to transpire, it has to get to the right. Yet almost a quarter of them are just getting lost someplace in there. And it just keeps going on and on. Now we're saying DTSC can really track this and deal with this issue. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that if they've allowed a quarter of them to lapse. And we'll see.
And Chair and Senator Lowenthal, I agree. We have met with DTSC. They are concerned about the problem. They've committed to working with us and trying to fix the problem. This does put some guideposts in the process.
Absolutely. This helps with a problem, but it doesn't solve the problem that has been created by and somehow it's a huge problem that just is going to go on, and I think that DTSC somehow is not following it, or it's not high enough priority. They're just letting these things go on or whatever.
Senator, in the spirit of...
I'm willing to go along with it.
No, I understand. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look to Assemblymember Miller, who is the representative of the chair, and say here in real time, how about a 4-year sunset on the bill as well? That will give people time to sort these things out. It will also give the committee assurances that the issue doesn't go away and get lost in the black hole. All right? Does that sound workable?
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
So if we at this point, unless there are other questions.
I have just one last question, and I think I know the answer, but I think this should be asked on the record. So for any violation, whether it's violating the more than one pickup rule or not renewing your number within a month, is a $10,000 penalty, and that's per day. Per day. So if you per day until your violations are taken care of. So those are pretty substantial. And
I'm corrected by staff, 3-year sunsets, what has been discussed as I understand it. I think that still provides adequate time.
Right.
All right, then we would ask for a motion to do pass. Do pass is as amended. Committee amendments. Contingent on written notification from the chair of the committee that the bill will be heard when it comes back to the House of Origin, and with the understanding that there's a 3-year sunset on the bill. And we have that motion from Senator Corbett, and with that understanding, we will call the roll.
Simitian?
Aye.
Simitian, aye. Runner? Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley?
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Strickland? It's 5 yes.
5-0, your bill has sufficient votes to move out of the committee, but we're hoping to hold the roll open for absent members. One moment, please, while I determine whether or not Ms. Strickland just for members I've been advised, Ms. Strickland's in a Republican caucus, which is continuing to go on, and so we're just trying to respect the fact that folks on the other side of the aisle are having a caucus and want to give Ms. Strickland the opportunity to add on if he wishes. Do we have any members who are present who did not have the opportunity, staff, to vote on the first bill? Madam Secretary? Have all of our members had the opportunity to vote on the first bill who wishes to vote on the first bill? All right. Then I will say to the members who are present that we will be in We're going to hold the roll open until 3 o'clock, and we're going to hope that Mr. Strickland can either step away from the caucus or that the caucus wraps up by that time. But we'll hold the roll open until 3 o'clock, and at that point we'll lift the call on both bills, take a final vote, and I'm guessing we can even get it done by 10 of 3 based on some recent developments. All right? So let's open the roll on the first of the 2 bills, which is Assembly Member Huber's bill. That's AB 231. AB 231. And why don't we ask staff to call the absent members? All of the absent members, yeah. AB 231, this is by Assembly Member Huber. This is the CEQA measure, which the motion was due pass as amended. And there was no opposition on the bill as amended. Forgive me, there was no opposition testimony. There is some opposition which has not yet been cleared by virtue of reconsideration, which may or may not be cleared by virtue of reconsideration. Okay? Call the roll.
Runner? Pavley? Strickland?
Aye.
Strickland, aye. That's 5 yes.
5-0. That bill is out. And then we have the one committee bill that Assemblymember Miller was kind enough to present, and that is AB 25. That is as amended. There are committee amendments. There's a 3-year sunset, and there's a commitment, contingency that is tied to a commitment from the committee to hear the bill in the House of Origin if and when it arrives back there. Call the absent members.
Brunner? Strickland? Aye. Strickland, aye. 6-0.
6-0, that bill is out. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator.
Without objection, members, committee is adjourned.